My guest today is Elaine Simpson, and Elaine has a really interesting background. She is one of three, well, of course there are three because there's triplet girls, but she's one of triplet girls born on Christmas 2 months premature. And she likes to say she was the last to come out, but in first place now. She started her company when she was laid off 10 years ago as a single mom in Michigan. And now she has a national training, consulting, and speaking company with offices both in Michigan and Arizona. She doesn't look back with regret, and she sees every moment in time and every experience as a stepping stool to where she is today. She now has 13 subcontractors who work under her umbrella, providing HR services, compliance auditing, maintenance training, and other operational services for her clients. And she has an online learning program with over 550 sessions. I can't even imagine that. 550 sessions, and created and published an adult coloring book for property managers about a month ago, and worked on a nonfiction customer service equals resident retention book for property managers, which is first in a series. Well, Elaine, why don't you just stand still and not do much? How are you?
I'm doing great, and standing still is really what I would like to do, but I get pulled in all sorts of different directions. So you go with the flow.
It's interesting because we're talking about living regret-free, and you're doing a lot. I mean, I ran a company. I had 7 offices. I had 350 people under me, and I know what that was like. And I can imagine now, because subcontractors now are the thing, what it's like to manage them and control them and make sure they're not doing their own thing and that kind of thing. But so let's begin by you telling us how you live regret-free, and if you really do.
Well, and I believe that I do. And the real thing it comes down to is, things happen in our lives, good, bad, the ugly. And it's not necessarily, that something bad has happened, but how you react to it and what you learn from it, and taking that information and moving on. And, there have been some bad things in my life. There have been some great things in my life. I had a marriage, was married for 13 years, and realized it got too crowded in our marriage when my husband had some other special friends, and decided that I was not going to put up with that, and moved on. And, people look at me and they say, well, do you think getting married was a mistake? And absolutely not. I am here today because of what happened, good, bad, and ugly. And I wouldn't change a moment of it. If he hadn't made a mistake, would I still be married to him? Possibly. But quite frankly, I think I'm much better off today than had he not made a mistake. I found a wonderful man, married him. Before that, I was a single mom and ventured out on my own and had the support of friends and family and raised my son. And it was tough, but it was incredible. And I look back and I think, you know what? I've done a pretty good job. And I don't think I would change anything. Yeah, there was some heartbreak and some sorrow, but at the time that I went through it, yeah, it was tough. But looking back, I think it's really, truly what's defined and made me who I am today. And I love what I do. I do what I love. I do it with people I love, and I do it in places I love. Who can ask more than that?
Oh, I was just going to say, you've mentioned a lot of things in what your answer to me was. I believe that we all have what I call stuff that comes into our life on a daily basis. I mean, it's called living. You can't have everything perfect. And it is how you deal with it. It is your coping mechanisms. It is how you approach, what's going on in your life. And you had a wonderful son from the marriage, so that's a benefit as well. And it also taught you what to look for and what not to look for in the next man that you married. So there's a lot of things that happened to you because of that, including you starting your business. So yeah, there's a lot of things that, and that's what I think people need to understand and realize, is that a lot of people have stuff that happens. As a matter of fact, in my newsletter this past week, I just wrote about the fact that, there is a lot of stuff that comes into your life. And I called it crap because I said there's a lot of crap that comes into your life. but it is your coping mechanisms and how you approach it. And if you think anyone is not going to have that, no matter what their position or their status in life, that's crazy. Everybody goes through that. So, what would you say the greatest benefit of living regret-free has been for you? Is it your new marriage? Is it your child? Is it your business? Is it your peace of mind? What do you think is the greatest benefit you've had, or are they all benefits?
They are all benefits. I couldn't have one without the other, I don't think. I think it all works well together, and that's, I love what I do. And so often people wish they were doing a different job or with different people, or in a different state, because being in Michigan is cloudy and gray and cold during the winter months. Then move, do something about it. It's so frustrating to hear about problems and nobody does anything with it. And that's when you start living regretfully, I think. Woulda, coulda, shouldas are what make up regret to me.
Right. Coulda, shoulda, woulda. But, it's interesting. My husband was from Michigan, so I am well familiar with the weather. And I was born in New York State, so I, certainly knew the cold weather and the gray days, and that's why I left. But, there are people, it seems to me, there are people who really get pleasure out of complaining. I mean, it seems like that's what they do all day is complain, but they don't take any steps to get out of their situation. So when you were, divorced and you were left with as a single mom, I'm sure it was very scary for you to go into business, and look how you've built it up. So what were some of the things that you went through, and what were some of the challenges that you had?
Well, being a new business, as you can imagine, it was, getting people to know who I am and what I do. And, I am fortunate. I look young for my age, but that can sometimes play negatively when you're a business owner. So in property management, there are a lot of male executives. The owners often are male. And so having a young looking blonde come in and meet with them, they're wondering, what does she know about what she talks about, and what experience does she have? How does she know this? And I think that was a big challenge. I learned how to prepare them for who I am. So when I would land an opportunity meeting, so it would be an initial meeting to talk about their situation, I sent my bio, which would show 30 years experience, which right there doesn't tell them how old I am, but gives them a pretty good idea how old I'm not. And gave them some.
Well, they probably did picture somebody a lot different than you are, Elaine. If you say 30 years experience, they were thinking, well, she's going to walk in and she's going to be this nice gray-haired lady,
Right, exactly. And, unfortunately, sometimes it's hard when you are young or look young to have people take you seriously. And so I've learned that when I did development for many years. I learned that working with men, I have to establish my credibility before I even meet with them. So, sending over kind of a bio sheet and some of the accomplishments, and even in some cases, some testimonials from other professional males at the executive level helped me break in. It helped give me some credibility. It helped them to understand I'm not just some young blonde coming in and talking with them and telling them, everything's butterflies and lollipops. And so I had some grit behind me. I'm also fortunate in that I did grow up in Detroit. And growing up in Detroit, the three of us went to public schools in Detroit. We were the minority. So I learned how to kind of stand on my own and deal with things, and learned how to identify how to connect with people. And so I think that helped a lot. That's helped a lot just in my life. And so I think that helped with my business. The challenge was money often. I took out some of my investments that I had left over from when I was married and cashed those in, and that paid for a long time for my salary. I also worked part-time for a home healthcare company providing marketing and training for them. So I did what I had to do to make things work. And looking back, I made some mistakes. There were some things I spent money on, like brochures and things like that, which really honestly I didn't need. But I had to learn that. So I've learned a lot and learned what not to do. I've also learned that I don't take every single job that comes across my table. I've learned to, as I was telling somebody earlier today, I've learned how to incorporate the PITA factor into my proposals, which is the pain in the butt factor of clients, specific clients. How much time am I really going to be spending on the phone at 10 o'clock at night with this client? I've learned to do all that. I learned that because I made mistakes and I get calls at 11 o'clock at night. When you're on the East Coast, you've got a client on the West Coast, they're 3 hours behind you. I work all day. I get up at, 5 in the morning, I'm dealing with East Coast, and don't go to bed until 9 or 10 o'clock dealing with the West Coast. So again, I kind of learned to put parameters and built in the PITA factor for some of those. So it's always a learning process.
It's interesting, because there's a lot of things that you said in there. In fact, I was just saying, my daughter came over on the weekend and she said, well, you know what Grandma used to say, my mom, she says, what Grandma used to say, you do what you have to do. And I thought, that's exactly how I live my life. I do what I have to do. And it's what you said, you do what you have to do at the time. But you did some really clever things. I mean, I don't think people beginning their own business would analyze it the way you did and say, I'm going to go in with letters of reference and testimonials from males who are big in the industry. So this kind of prepares them for me. I'm going to have these people who are backing me, who can speak for me and go in there, and you prepared them, which is interesting. And you also said something else about the brochures. Of course, brochures now, everything is digital, but still more people, when they start in business, they spend more time getting their website done and their business card done and this and that and the other, rather than going out and getting business, which is, of course, the most important thing because that's what's going to pay you. But there are so many clever things that you did, Elaine, to begin. And I think it really stood you in good stead. So did you have a mentor or anyone who that you learned from that had a great impact on you?
It's going to sound, there are a couple people. One is my husband. He is an entrepreneur, and when he and I got together, and I started my business just before that, he was my sounding board. And I've had people say, you guys talk business all the time, but we both love business. We both enjoy working. So it's nice. And he's the one that taught me the PITA factor, actually.
I like that.
Yeah. The other is my dad, who is a developer and owns a management company. I worked for him on and off over the years. Part of the rule was he had hired me a second time when his business partner passed away, and he needed someone to oversee development and acquisitions. And I had done that for a national company, and he approached me and asked me if I would come work for him. And it was not something I really wanted to do. I love my dad dearly, but we have very different approaches to business. And I like having my dad. I don't feel I can have him as a dad when he's my boss. But I agreed. I was in a situation where I needed to do this. I agreed to do it. But now I'm coming into a development company and overseeing construction, which is primarily men. And at the time, I was probably in my late 20s, early 30s, blonde, young, daughter of the owner. Can you imagine how well that goes over with construction guys?
Absolutely.
So, I learned a lot from my dad in the sense that he put me in the position to learn those things. And he's a great businessman. So we do talk business. And I only worked for him for about 5 years that time. Actually, it was 7 years. I said 5 years, but I got stuck for 7. And he jokes that I was the toughest negotiator when it came to the hiring process for me. So I bounce ideas off of him and really say, if you were a client of mine, how would you feel if I approached you with this? and he gives me honest feedback. I don't always do what he suggests. Quite frankly, many times I